This is the end table plan of procedure, step 9. We're working on the drawers, okay? And for the first step, we need to get all the boards milled down to size for the drawer. And we need to follow what's on the paper in this area here for the sizes. You have to use your table, do some measurements on the table and figure everything out that way to get the exact sizes. Now at this point, you should have a good understanding of the process that you need to go through to get the boards down to size. In that you need to join an edge, then you're going to cut it, rip it to width, and then you're going to cut it to length after you square the edges, and we're going to surface it down to the thickness that it needs to be. Now for this part of the project, we've got two thicknesses going on. We've got the sides and the back that are going to be 1/2 inch thick. The front is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick. So you got to be really careful when you go through the process on the surface planer of what you're milling it down to. What thickness are you going to? Okay. So on what I've done is I found some boards on the short rack that'll work, and these ones happen to be boards that we cut into 3 pieces from a 2-inch thicker part that's not good for the legs anymore, but this will work great for our drawer and stuff. So this thickness is actually already down to about 3/4, maybe a little bit less than 3/4. And so the important thing here is when you go to the surface planer, you need to measure how thick things are, measure how thick it is, and set the surface planer for a 1/16 inch less than how thick this is. So if this is at 3/4, okay, we're going to set the surface planer to 11/16, and then we'll start sending it through and going through the process, and we're going to go down to 1/2 inch on those. On this one, I'm just a little bit over 3/4, so I just need to go to the surface planer, set it to 3/4, and send it through and do 3/4. So for a lot of this video, I'm going to show you the process of cutting these down, but I'm going to speed up the time so it'll go through pretty quick. That way you can watch it, get a reminder of how to go through it, and but it won't take a real long time for you to watch it. spent some time sanding the boards so that the faces are all sanded both inside and out. And if you take the time to do that right now, it just makes things a lot easier later on when you're finished doing the final sanding once the drawer is assembled. So take a little time, sand all the faces, and at this point, step number 4, we need to decide how the drawer is going to go together. The thicker board, okay, the 3/4 inch board is the front of your drawer. And so I'm going to lay it out right here like this. And then the 2 longer and taller boards are for the sides. And just like on the back and the sides that we did, take a look at it, figure out what you want to see on the outside of the drawer, what you want to see on the inside. A lot of times you see more with the inside of the drawer than you do on the outside edge of the drawer. So with this, I'm going to put it in the back with that knot that's right there. And then these ones looks pretty good. So it's going to go together somewhat like this. Okay? And now it says to mark where we're going to be doing our rabbets and grooves. And so I'm just going to lay this down, lay them down like that. So I'm going to have a groove across the board about like that and about like that. And you don't need to draw necessarily, but mark where your grooves are going to be. Okay. So I'm going to have grooves like that. And then I'm going to have rabbets, and make sure you're following the pictures here where the rabbits go. So the front is going to have a rabbit on the end and on the end. So there's 2 rabbits. The sides will have the rabbits at the back of the drawer. So back here, I'll have a rabbit and a rabbit. Okay? So I've marked where those rabbits, the rabbits and the grooves are going to be. That'll just make it a lot easier when I go over and do the next step on the router table to know where we need to do these different cuts. Right, I'm at the router number 1 table. It says right here, router number 1. And on the paper, router number 1 is for the rabbet joints. So we are going to be cutting on this router table. We won't be cutting this board. We'll set it to the side, the back. We'll be recutting the rabbets on the ends of the front, and then the one end on the sides. And when you're using the router table, you got to be very careful. This blade, this bit is exposed and can very easily do a lot of damage to your fingers. So we need to be careful, keep your fingers away. We're going to actually use this a little block behind it to help push it as we go pushing through. And notice the arrow points this way. You always travel the same direction as the arrow. And we're going to push it through. When we get to there, we'll come out. Remember, never try to go back this way because it'll want to grab it and throw it back towards you. And so we'll cut these boards and show you how this is done. All right, so I got everything ready to go here. The other boards are out of the way. Make sure this stays tight against the fence. Turn on the router down here with the switch in the front. Keep it down tight against the table. So notice, as I did this, I went across and I started to cut into the push block a little bit, and that's good. But then I stopped and pulled out. Okay, don't cut all the way through the push block, just cut part way into the push block and then come out. Now on this one, we only need it on one end. I'll do the other 3 cuts now. This end right here. So what happened on that one is at first it tries to kind of go into that little groove right here. You want to make sure it's tight against this block so it doesn't want to go into that groove. And then it kind of came away a little bit. So I just did a second pass to clean it up. Sometimes you have to do 2 passes to clean it up and make sure it's nice and straight. So now those are the rabbet cuts. We're going to go over to the other router and do the groove cuts. All right, on router number 2, we're doing the groove cuts for what will be the bottom of the drawer. And this one can be a little bit tricky, so make sure you're following this procedure. This is where my groove cut goes, so it goes down and against the fence. And I'm gonna do the same, I'm gonna hold a block here, and as I push through, I'm gonna leave the block sitting here just to hold the board against the fence. And then just like on the joiner, as we push through and I come over to the other side and we continue pushing through. Do not put your block right here against the bit, okay? I'm gonna hold it here to hold it tight against the fence and then push that down. Now, on the front and the sides, we can use our hands and just push this through, and we'll use this fence as the guard for our hands. When we do the back, though, it's shorter, and so we'll have a push stick to push it through, okay? Plug it in here. Okay, let's make this cut. Okay, so now we have that groove cut in there. Now my biggest concern here is thumb trailing behind, getting down into the blade. Make sure you keep your thumb up on the top of the board. Your fingers are up here and you're pushing it all the way through, and your thumb's not down in the way where it's gonna get cut up, okay? You gotta be very careful with this machine. It will take away a lot of fingers if you're not careful. Okay, next one. Back. Now the back end, we've got to use a push stick. So we have the push stick right here. Use the block still. And then we got all of our grooves cut for what will be the bottom of the drawer.